All right, here's a confession I need to make. I really love working with audio loops. I think this is one of the best ways to get started with a session, to get inspired and to get something going. And it actually helps you quite a lot when you want to finish music. But the huge danger of this workflow is that you might end up sounding like everyone else because you're using the same loops, the same sample packs, and so on. Our goal overall as artists, at least for me, is to sound unique, to sound like myself, to sound like not a bad copy of my favorite artists or anyone else out there. So how do you achieve that? Now, over the years, I've discovered hundreds of techniques to transform audio material in interesting ways and make it sound unique. But today I have something special for you. As a mixing and mastering engineer, I've developed certain techniques to completely abuse mixing and mastering tools in an interesting way to turn any generic loop into something that sounds truly like you, that is your artistic expression. Now, in case you don't know me yet, my name is Philipp from Pick Yourself. I produce mix and mastering music professionally for over 15 years. I run a professional mastering studio specializing in electronic music, and I also coach and mentor artists like you, helping them finish music at a really high quality level, consistently upgrading their workflow and their skills. So I do this together with a team at Pick Yourself, and if you're interested in this, just go to pickyourself.com/coaching. The link is also in the description. Now let's get into the video. So we have this little session here, and I have kick, some bass, and then a breakbeat loop that I've put on top here. So this sounds like this. Now there are two problems. So first of all, this type of breakbeat, it doesn't really fit the genre that I'm in. So I'm like in more like deeper hypnotic techno style. And I want to use some of that groove that's inside this, but I don't want to use the same generic breakbeat that you've probably heard a million times already and that doesn't even fit what I want to make. But I will share with you 3 different techniques that will transform this completely into something unique that is actually producing a lot of artistic value and some unique edge that I can incorporate into my sound. So my first technique is what I call the delta trick. For this, you need some kind of a mixing tool that produces a delta signal. So for example, something like Soothe. Soothe is a resonance suppressor. What it basically does is it analyzes the audio signal. It analyzes also the resonances in this material. And then you can decide how you want to suppress them, how much you want to kind of duck the resonances that stand out, how much you want to duck them into the signal. Here, this is basically suppressing those resonances, and you can push even more signal into this. So what I will do is I will do something very, very strange and just add like a couple of different bands that will push this down even more. I will make this sound very extreme. And then I will produce the delta signal here. So the delta signal is basically just what we are treating. Yeah, so it's the difference between our original signal and our treated signal. Right, and usually you just use a delta signal like this to basically control what am I doing here, how is this working, what am I affecting here. But you can actually use this as a sound design trick where you're like, okay, let's just keep it like that and not even worry about anything else. If you use something like a limiter on top of that, FabFilter Pro L2 has also a way to create a delta signal by using this little icon here. It's also puts into 1-to-1, so I'm not going crazy in terms of loudness. So I will push the signal into the limiter. And what we're hearing is now how it's affecting this. I'll also go for a mode that is even more interesting, the aggressive mode here. And your goal is to produce artifacts here that you can later on use as a new sample in your session. So this is why I really like this technique. It uses something that already exists, but turns it into something that you can recycle later in very interesting ways. So this, for example, you could use as little ambient clicks and cuts. This is how I imagine using this. The cool thing with Ableton is you can always just bounce these things to a new track. So you can go here, like with some of the new versions, you can do this, bounce to new track. And what it does is it just creates an audio version of what we have produced here. And this, you can obviously increase the gain, play around with it, also warp it in interesting ways. The old one is deactivated already, and you can then listen to the loop with this new breakbeat bounce that we've created here. Now, if you feed this, for example, into a reverb, it can start to sound very interesting. But I will share more with you in the next techniques, and the next one is going to blow your mind. You've probably not seen this anywhere before, but it's something that I've learned by watching some of these weird color-based producers. So the next technique is what I call the resonance roller coaster. And for this to work, you actually need just an EQ. You can use the standard Ableton EQ, it doesn't really matter. So you just use the EQ8 and you activate all the bands, make them into bell shapes, and you start boosting them. And then you select them and basically make them a bit sharper. You want to intentionally create really sharp boosts here. And we're still using this like exported loop that we've had. Now you select all of them and you basically move them around until you find like a nice sweet spot. I should maybe put this before the hybrid reverb. So if something sounds too sharp, you can obviously tame it a little bit, make it less aggressive. This is kind of a really nice sweet spot that we have. If something's too low, it also doesn't make sense. You want to push it up a little bit so that you're not boosting crazy sub-bass frequencies. And the cool thing here is you're accentuating specific overtones in the signal. This is still just the beginning, because what you now need to do is you need to create different LFO tools and map them to the frequencies of these individual EQ points. So you go to the LFO tool and then you start mapping this to the frequency. So for example, the frequency of the first one, then you add in another LFO tool. You always use slightly different rates. So some of the LFOs are cycling faster, some of them are cycling slightly lower. And I like to do this randomly, first of all, not really mapping it to a specific time signature. So you can already hear there's like a little bit of change going on in how this sounds. Now I will speed this up and just add the other LFOs and then get back to you. All right, so as you can see, I have now LFOs mapped to pretty much every frequency at very different times. And this is what it sounds like. Yeah, there's one last technique that I will share with you right now, which you've probably not seen yet. And I think this is very cool for bringing up the edge and the unique character. Before we get into this, I want to share with you a free resource that I have. It's called the Finisher Framework. This is my 3 simple steps that will help you finish at least one great sounding song per month. This is a totally realistic goal. If you follow these principles, you can get it at pickyourself.com/framework. The link is also in the description. So my final sound design technique here is all about abusing vintage compressors, getting the crunch out of them and using that to drive the texture of what you're working on. One tool that I like to use for this is old 1176 emulations. Obviously, you can also use an Ableton compressor and just drive this really hard, maybe combined with a little bit of distortion. As you know, on my channel, I use very rarely external plugins. But here, this is a really good example where you get something special out of these types of tools. So this has something called the all button in mode, which means you can press all these ratio buttons at the same time. So instead of just selecting a 4:1 ratio or just a 20:1 ratio, this is like a glitch that already exists in the analog hardware where you can press all these buttons at the same time. This is also why it's called the all button in trick. You can then drive the signal really hard into this compressor. I want to listen to how the rooms start creeping up in the background. It's really interesting. So this creates a really interesting texture and it really brings up those rooms, but it also gives it a certain color that has to do with the distortion characteristics of this tool. Now, what I like to do is, because sometimes the result is too extreme and it starts to sound too pushed and compressed, is to just use it in parallel. So I just put the parallel mix a little bit down and find kind of the sweet spot where I have the dynamics from the original signal, but then the texture and richness of this type of sound. Now before and after. Now, if you got some inspiration out of this video, you will absolutely love that other one in which I'm completely abusing an Ableton Live internal tool for really creative sound design effects.